If you want to write actually the procedure, I mean the methodology section, the procedure subsection, you can use some infinitives to tell the readers the purpose of doing one thing or the other. Let's look at some cliches, some phrases. For example, to establish whether there is a relationship between A and B, then you can continue your sentence here, okay? Or to rule out the possibility that X will do something, the participants were, for example, were separated, were actually this were classified or were put into two groups or subgroups. You can use some sentences like this to determine whether, for example, there is a relationship between A and B, whether A affects B or not. The cells were incubated for 24 hours, for example. To measure X, a question asking your question can be added here, then was used. This means that you can fill in the blanks to tell the readers what was the reason why you did something. This is part of your procedure, and in this part you are telling that I did one thing for this purpose, for example, okay? Or the vials were kept with something here to prevent something. Okay, then you can fill in the blank. Here we have some other actually phrases and cliches. The process was repeated several times in order to remove. Here you can tell that, for example, I think that there might be some mistakes. To that reason, I mean because of that reason, I repeated the process sometimes, several times, for example. In an attempt to make each interviewee feel as comfortable as possible, the interviewer, for example, asked questions or used some techniques or instruments to ask questions. Here, the purpose of doing one thing on the side of interviewer can be written here, can be told here. In order to identify the T10 and T11, the subjects were asked to, as you see here, in order to understand how X regulates Y, a series of transfections was performed, as you see here. This means that we can use different cliches. To see if the two methods gave the same measurement, the same result, the data was plotted. As you see here, we had one purpose in mind, and we did something to see if the two methods, for example, give the same result or not. Here we have some other cliches. To control for bias, we want it to be unbiased. Then measurements were carried out by another person. The researcher himself or the researcher herself did not do the research. On behalf of him or her, someone else carried out the research. Okay, to make it fair, unbiased. To enable the subjects to see the computer screen clearly, the laptop was configured with something. To increase the reliability of measures, each X was tested twice with a 4-minute break between. This means that we repeated one test for 2 times, and between the two a 40-minute break was, so that we can increase the reliability of measures. To compare the scores 3 weeks after initial screening, a global ANOVA F test was used. As you see here, you can use some cliches.